Jeremy says we're good. So it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the criminal justice meeting for probation. We'll start off with them. Do we have a quorum, Amanda? You're on mute. Am I getting to wait a second? Okay.
That would be correct.
Brad, only Amanda can do that.
I was reading your lips.
Okay, Amanda says we're good to go. We do have a quorum. I'm sure she'll let me know who's there in the boardroom so I don't forget if they have any questions. So at this point, we'll call the meeting to order. Can I please have a motion to approve the minutes of our prior committee meeting? That motion is made by Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor Driscoll. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, those sound good. So let's move on to our action and agenda item. Our first request in front of us is a resolution request to extend a contract with Automon for case management software maintenance and support fee in the amount of $8,835.56 for the term commencing on August 18th of this year and ending in a year, August 17, 2021, to include annual renewals, price increases not to exceed $10,000 without a future need for board resolutions. And at this point in time, if I could have a motion to get this onto the floor with a second, we'll open it up to discussion and allow Mr. Usey to discuss it. Supervisor Legge, are you making that motion?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Could I have a second to that, please? Supervisor Beatty? Thank you. Let's open it up for discussion. And if no one objects, can we put this right over to Bob to give us a little bit more of an explanation? Not good? Mr. Usey.
Thank you. What we have here is Automon is our vendor that does our case management system. And like everybody else, everything we do is through our case management system. And actually through the years, it is basically prevented us from having to hire any additional clerical staff because we really don't use clerical staff. Our officers do all the work on the case management system. So every year there is a maintenance and user fee payment, and this year is, as Rachel said, $8,835. Usually goes up about 5% a year, and Automon's not the easiest company to deal with. So in terms of negotiating contracts, I don't know if Ryan Dickey is on the call, but he was very good at negotiating last year for our needs. And Automon is tricky, so we believe if we can get the automatic renewals, we have a contract in place, it just makes life easier for all of us, and the limit's not to exceed $10,000.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thanks, Bob. Are there any questions for Bob? Okay.
Yeah, I have one, Madam Chairman. Thank you. We've been with Automon for a while. It's at some point, will we need to go out for an RFP or a bid to get competitive pricing on this? I know there's always a cost that comes with changing.
Right. I'm sorry.
No, good question, Supervisor Leggett. Bob?
Interestingly enough, Automon is the only vendor in the state of New York that provides the software. They have the system in every county except Washington. So what we've done is we do a direct source contract with them because they're the only vendor that can provide this. If we put it out for bid, we'd have to go to about 10,000 people on the public site for the state, and none of them can do it. So Automon's put themselves in a pretty good position in the state of New York. With that said, their product is good. It works for us. We've developed, they enhance things. We do something called CE check-in now, which is remote access for people to report via the email. We can send them text messages, and certainly during the pandemic, that's helped us with respect to keeping low risk and medium risk people to report. So Automon has the market on New York State.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just a follow up to Craig's question. Good morning, Bob. The issue is that they're difficult to work with, but it's not that they're not in compliance with the contract. They're just kind of difficult folks to work with. Is that correct?
They're not, the people we work with are not difficult, just negotiating a contract was difficult.
Okay.
The owner is also an attorney, so.
Okay.
He throws some bizarre things in because he thought he could. But Ryan, like I said, Ryan Dickey was very good on our behalf, but the company's fine. Just the
Great.
contract was for $8,000 last year. It took a lot longer than it should.
Okay, thanks. No offense, Marcy.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. Bob, moving on, your second resolution. The resolution request today is to extend the contract with Warren County Employment and Training for the Raise the Age, also known as RTA, Employment Training Program in the amount of $114,464. That contract would range from September 1st of this year until March 31st of 2021. Could I have a motion to get that on the floor, please? That motion is made by Supervisor Driscoll, seconded by
Peter McDevitt, second.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. Without objection, let's turn it over to Bob just for some clarification on this request, if that's okay.
Sure. What this is through Raise the Age money, we're able to contract with certain entities in our community that we're able to provide evidence-based programming, and Bill Moon's on the call, and he's one of them. We'll be getting to him a little bit later with attempting to renew his contract. But what we've done with employment and training is through the years set up a unique opportunity to refer our Raise the Age kids, those are kids from 16 to 18, to employment and training, where they would get educational training, employment training, and real-time work. So the program is something that we think is very worthwhile to continue. It is funded through Raise the Age money. Of course, funding from anything on the state is, we're on hold to see what's actually going to come in. The contract's for $114,000 because that's what we factored in for. I can't remember the exact number of slots we had. If we had it, something that we referred quite a few individuals to. But last year, Amy Secor is here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Amy. We had a couple referrals. They did bits and pieces of the program. And for the time period we had it going, we spent about $3,500. So although it's for $114,000, highly unlikely that we come close to that figure, simply because the money would be based on the referrals we send to them. As we know, we're in a pandemic situation. Our numbers of people coming into the departments, particularly in the juvenile world at this point, are low. But if we have it in place, it's certainly something that is worthwhile to continue. We're starting it in September, which gives us another month or so to see what shakes down from the state funding. But I think regardless, it's a worthwhile program for the youth we serve.
Thank you, Mr. Yuki. I would agree. Is there any questions from any supervisors regarding this?
Yeah.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Bob, on the youths that are involved with this, are they in school at the same time?
They are at school at the same time. There are some that may not be in school because we find that that's just the nature. And I think as we talk about things in the educational system, not everybody's cut out for high school education, and a vocational component is extremely important, and that provides that alternative for some of those individuals. So we factored in a couple different ways to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, great. Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So that takes care of your two resolution requests. I know at this point we're going to move on to your Big Brothers Big Sisters piece of our agenda this morning. And Director Yusi, if you would just kind of give an overview and introduce the executive director for us of Big Brothers Big Sisters, that would be great.
I'd be happy to. The executive director, who many of you know, is Bill Moon, And through the last couple of years, we have focused on getting mentors involved with our youth. And as we know, that's an evidence-based program. That's one of the best things you can do for people who don't have positive male or female role models in their lives. We're fortunate to have big brothers and big sisters in our community. That's a gold standard of what we do with mentors. And I say that because when we have youth and we're referring them to other agencies to work with, we want to ensure that the people they're going to be matched with have been completely vetted. They've had background checks. They look into pretty much every aspect of their life. So we want to make sure that when we refer youth to be mentored, we want to make sure that there will be no harm done to them, because in this world, you never know what people's intentions are. But with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, not only is the program valuable, but the way they vet individuals is certainly very important to us. And Bill and Megan have been fantastic. I think one of the things Bill will touch upon today is with our youth, they bring some other challenges that other kids may not have. And finding mentors is sometimes a struggle. So I think that's what Bill wants to do. This is a program that they've been great to work with, and we see it as a big part of our future. So with that said, if we're ready for Bill, then that would be fantastic.
That would be great. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Moon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sieber. And Bob, I just want to start by mentioning how wonderful it's been to work with Bob and Amy in their office. You have extraordinary people working in your probation department in the county, and we're thankful to partner with you. As Bob mentioned, Megan is our program coordinator. She's on the call, and I promise not to make her present, but she's here to tell me where I mess up. So I appreciate you being on the call as well. And to the supervisors, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you and share with you a little bit about what we're doing and how we hope to do some things a little bit in the future. As Bob had mentioned, the youth that are in our community that we're trying to serve here face a very wide range of adversities. So we serve children in the community from very low needs, from maybe social issues, or working through difficulties making friends, single parent households, et cetera, all the way through very high needs and through the court system. So over the last few years, we've partnered with the probation department to help serve some of those higher needs kids that are already engaged with the juvenile court system, or on their way. Even we're trying to work on some preventative things for some kids that are headed in that direction. So maybe we can intervene a little earlier. I think we can collectively all agree that none of us got where we were alone, and that somebody helped invest in us, whether that be time, energy, or resources, to help us become successful. And I think, the foundation of what we do here is we recognize that not all children have that. Not all children have someone to believe in them, to help them to believe in themselves, or to help show them a path of something different, maybe something different than what they've grown up with or the world that they know. And when you think about how valuable that is, what we're trying to do is take kids that are perhaps in some generational cycles of some destructive behaviors and intercede a little bit to create an example of something new. What could be your future? And that sounds, very simple, but oftentimes is difficult to achieve and easy to overlook. So throughout our partnership, we've been able to do that. And to help make that happen for kids, what you need volunteers, you need resources, and you need people to advocate. So what I'm here today talking with the supervisors is one, we need all three, but I particularly like to talk to you about advocacy and volunteerism. So we're trying to serve some children in some of our more remote towns. Within this county, we're also serve Washington County and Northern Sarasota County. And I bring that up because what we were able to do in the Salem community in Washington County is we were able to get that town to come together and help us say, are you interested? Can you help connect us to people in your community that may be interested in becoming volunteers and making an impact? They were able to organize themselves, and then we came in. So we were able to spend resources on a remote section of where we serve. And by them coming together, we were able to match several kids. And this was a pilot program that we did about 18 months ago. And today we have 7 mentors that are in Salem. And, I thought the world ended right before Salem. it doesn't. And we were able to serve some kids out there, which I didn't think would be possible. So our goal is that maybe if some of the supervisors here represent some of our more northern towns, if we could open up a dialogue about how could some people in your community that may have an interest in that, could we get in front of, could we, come together as a group, but we can go and present to you, we can explain what we're looking for, what our needs are, and what that looks like. And if that's possible, I think that together we could help serve a wider range of the county, which is certainly a goal of ours. And I know probation has sent us a couple referrals of some kids that are up north as well. And we want to make sure that we have volunteers for them. All kids deserve someone to believe in them and to invest in them. And, together as a community, we can help fill some of that void. So that's the bulk of what we're trying to work with here. We have a program that will be released pretty soon with Sheriff LaFar's office. I think that we have some volunteers that may be coming through that avenue with a program, and I welcome an opportunity in the future to talk to you about that. Are there any questions that I could help answer today?
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Bill, do you have any social media type of things that we could post on Facebook from our local page?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking about that. So we do. You can follow me at Bill Moon. You can follow Megan, Program Coordinator, or you could follow a very complicated bbbssadk.org. We love our acronyms in this world. And you can see some of the stuff we have. But if you want to reach out to me directly, and I can make all my contact information available, what we can do is we can generate a flyer specifically towards your community. We recently sent one of these out to Greenwich, for example, last week, and we're going to be working with them as well. So we'll be happy to customize any collateral that may speak to your town in particular.
Thank you.
Bill, I think that's a great idea. And I see that Don Lehman is on our call. And I would just ask that you reach out and work directly with Don, who's our public information officer. I think Don could do a great job at being able to coordinate and get out that information on your flyer at countywide, but also if you want to send a general email to Amanda Allen with all that information, Amanda Allen will make sure that it's sent to every single supervisor. That way we all have your information. And criminal justice meets, or public safety meets right after this. So I don't know if you want to just take the opportunity and talk to Don about that program to get information out, or if you'd like to share just for a couple minutes that coordination with, if Supervisor Leggett doesn't object. It seems like it pairs nicely. We try to have our two committees back to back for that reason.
That would be wonderful. You just tell me to stay on the call or information to get on a separate call.
Supervisor Leggett, would you like them to just talk about it now, or you want to do it during your meeting?
Well, let's, I think most everybody that's going to be in my committee is here already. So let's have Bill, so we don't have to take up his whole morning on here. Thank you, Bill. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Perfect. So just to clarify, what specific things would you like me to talk to about for this committee?
How do the programs differ? You're asking to make sure that we get the word out there to help advocate, look for volunteers, and general education to the public. But you did mention a program that you're doing with the sheriff's office, and how does that differ from this advocacy effort or from what you're doing working with Bob?
Wonderful. So yes, the program that we're going to have with the sheriff's office is entitled a Bigs in Blue program, and what that essentially is that it's a volunteer recruitment. So we're hoping to take officers, whether they're on the correction side, the communication, the civil division, or patrol officers, and we're getting out in front of them. And Sheriff LaFar has had a lot of impact. It has a lot of interest. So we're still in the infancy stages of that. We're going to be presenting to them as soon as the pandemic and some of those things we're able to get in there. But initial interest shows that we may have an influx of volunteers, of individuals that work within law enforcement. So that program in particular has been very successful in other parts of the country. also exposing officers to groups of populations that they may come in contact with in a negative impact, and helping them see this in a positive light, like how can they work together, as well as the children and families that they're serving, seeing law enforcement in a different light. It's different having gym shorts and throwing a football in a field versus the officer coming because your family may have done something inappropriate and having to deal with the trauma of what that looks like. So they're very different worlds. So the goal of that program is really to work on law enforcement relationships to help serve children in underserved communities or in pockets that may have negative law enforcement interaction with people that are in law enforcement. So that's that program. So some of those individuals that may be involved in that program may live in some of your towns within the county. The other program that we're talking about is really, it's about trying to bring a group together that we would have difficulty serving remotely. If we were to take resources to travel, for example, simple things like mileage, out to some of the more northern towns on a one-on-one individual, or if I were to recruit out there, if I can't table, I might run into 3 people at a table somewhere. But if we could communicate together and say, hey, let's have a forum at some centrally located spot that I don't know, and people were to come to us, we might be able to reach 7 or 8 people at once. So that's a more effective use of our resources as well as the town and individuals' time. So that's what we're looking for there, is to bring people together so that way we can talk about that.
Well, certainly everyone's getting much more creative in COVID and utilizing virtual prevention education. And, I'm sure we all love to hear about those foundations of community policing and, such a wonderful take on that. So definitely kudos to you and to our sheriff's department to making that happen. And we'll look forward to hearing more about that. But I think our public information officer could help you quite a bit in getting out that message as well. He's done a phenomenal job with prevention ed in our county.
Wonderful. I can tell you before, I just want to thank Warren County for the opportunity to talk with you and to work with you. Over the last couple of years, we've worked more closely with the county on all sorts of different levels and different initiatives. And they've always been a positive experience for our office as well as the kids in the community that we serve. So thank you for everyone who's on the call and the work that you do for our community.
Well, Bill, I think on behalf of our entire board, we certainly thank you and your agency for the efforts, but also to every single volunteer that takes the time to be part of that organization. And as you said, to invest in the lives of children. And it's certainly a team effort, and we're happy to be part of it, but we're glad you're leading the charge. Were there any other questions before we ask for public comment? Well, are there any other new items or new business or anything anyone would like to bring before our committee? Not hearing any. Don, is there any public comment? I know I want to wait a couple minutes after asking that too, or a couple seconds.
Yes, Chairwoman Sieber, there is nothing as of now. If anything pops up here in the next few seconds, I can intervene. Also, Mr. Moon, I'll find your contact information and reach out to you and get you my contact information, and we can chat later today.
Perfect. Thank you.
That would be great. I appreciate it. And Bill, so that we have like a 15-second lag in our public when we go on YouTube versus us communicating on Zoom. So that's why we always just wait a few seconds. But otherwise, if there's nothing more to go in front of our probation agenda, we can move over to public defender. Are you good, Bob?
Rachel, just one thing to add. One thing we talked about earlier in the year was the criminal justice reforms.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Bail reform, they amended the law a little bit to, I guess, make it a little more friendly to us in the courts. But we continue to get RUS cases still from county court. We supervise them. We're probably about 60. It's manageable for us. But most recently, there's a couple articles I shared with Supervisor Sieber and Ryan regarding things that happen in different communities. The violence in Albany. Things are happening in Rochester. And interestingly enough, the articles pointed to possibility of, contributing factors may have been raise the age, where kids, may not go to jail or detention for committing crimes, and, where they're just released. And then bail reform, same thing. With people not being able to have set bail. So it's interesting to keep an eye on what happens in the communities around us. Not that Rochester's close to us, but to date, we haven't experienced those things, but it still continues, and, crimes are still committed. And and the reforms that were put into place are still there. So we continue to monitor it. We have not been asked to do anything we can't do. So hopefully that continues.
Thank you, Director Yusi, for bringing that up. And I'll also ask that Amanda, I'll send it over to you to get those articles out to the full board. I do think for members of our committee, they're very informative, but as you said, we're seeing it in parts of our state, but certainly just in the paper because it's happening across the board. And as we talked about, it doesn't magically disappear because we're in the middle of COVID. We're still dealing with bail reform and criminal justice reform issues. And I know our public defender is going to talk a little bit about what's happening with the courts right now and what that looks like. But thanks, Bob, for always keeping us up to date. We certainly appreciate it. And without objection, I'll turn it right over to Marcy.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about my first 4 resolution requests as one grouping, if that's acceptable to you. What I'm requesting is contract funds for experts.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me just get it on the floor so that way we can get into discussion, if that's okay. If I'm understanding you correctly, we want to look at resolutions 1 through 4. All those relate to a request contract for grant funded expert services for 1, investigative services for 2, interpreter services for 3, and social worker services for 4. So could I have a resolution to please put resolution numbers 1 through 4 onto the floor? That is made by Supervisor Driscoll and seconded by Supervisor Leggett. At this point, without objection, if we could kick it over to our public defender to explain 1 through 4.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about my confusion there. The reason I wanted to put them all together is previously we had done a resolution request for mentors, which was a contractual item, and the contract was for funds, and all these funds that I'm asking for are only from Office of Indigent Legal Services. I'm not asking the county to provide any funding. So the funding is while the funding exists from ILS, and we only spend the funding that exists from ILS, and I'm not asking the county for any additional funding. So I have attached all 4 resolutions, and after that, I have attached part of a contract that we have done with ILS for the Harrell Herring funding, and at the top it talks about contracted or consultant services, and it lists the rates, and that's where we got those figures from. And right below it is to create a mentor program. So I wanted you to see how they related together. And then on the next page is attachment B-1, which is from the Harrell Herring contract. And if you look down towards under quality improvement, which is the 3rd section down there, it says contractual / consultant, and it deals with experts, interpreter, and transcripts, medical and other specialists. So it tells you how much money I have to spend for that, and we will only be spending those fundings. So I'm looking for a resolution request so that we could set up specific contracts for specific parties when necessary. I can't tell you what expert I'm going to need today on a case that's going to occur in the future, but I wanted to do it exactly as we did the mentor contract. And after the B1 attachment of the expense statement is the resolution that we did, which is resolution number 33 of 2020 for mentoring services. And I'd like these contracts to be set up the exact same way, saying how much money we have to spend per hour, and that it's only using the funds from ILS, and when we don't have those fundings, no further funding is granted. So that is the reason why I wanted those set up that way, and that's why I request to discuss them all together. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you for putting that sample resolution in there to just make it a little bit clearer on what we're looking for today. So questions on this, Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Marcy, are these service contracts, professional service contracts?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay.
Yes, sir, they are.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairwoman. In event that monies are not expended, the $12,500 at the end of the year, are those carried over? Do we have to vote on those transfers or no?
No, it's carried over, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Other questions? And I'm assuming,
Can I just expand on what I told Supervisor Driscoll? This is a 5-year contract, so technically year 1 rolls into year 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, as long as the fundings are granted by the state.
Great. Any other questions on this resolution before us for 1 through 4? Okay, hearing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Opposed? No opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. Marcy, then moving on to your request for number 5, which is a notice of intent to fill for coordinating assistant public defender. This expires on 7/30 of this month, this year. And could I have a motion to get that on the floor for discussion? I see Supervisor Leggett once again. And is there a second, Supervisor Driscoll? Thank you very much. Marcy, could you just talk a little bit about this one?
Sure. The coordinating assistant public defender is a supervisory position. I was in the process of interviewing people prior to COVID. I stopped once COVID occurred. And since COVID has occurred, I don't have a space to put this person. However, as I go into my agenda later, you'll see what my solution is on that. So I'm requesting to keep the position open. It is all fully funded by Office of Indigent Legal Services. There is no funding from the county, and it's on the understanding it's only from ILS funding. So I'm looking for an extension so that I could eventually hire that person once I had space to put it, that person.
Thank you. Marcy, are there any questions before we move for the vote? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. This is just for clarification. Marcy, this is above the 8 public defenders that you already have. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Great. Any others? No. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
See thumbs up. Everybody else? Anyone opposed? Okay, no one is opposed. That motion will carry. And our last resolution request today for Public Defender's Office is a notice of intent to fill for an assistant public defender, which is the 8th position due to reassignment. And let's get a motion to get that onto the floor. That motion is made by...
I will move it, Peter.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. Seconded by... Supervisor Leggett. Thanks. Mars, will you just explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Last month, I requested of you and you granted that I can move number 8 into the number 3 position. The reason being, number 3 would be allowed to do family court. Number 8 is only allowed to do criminal. So now I have this opening and I'd like to fill it. I don't have a place to put that person yet, but I eventually will, and I will, and it's grant funded. There's the majority of that is grant funded. 63,000 is funded through the ILS. So I'm looking to be able to eventually hire for that level.
Okay. Any questions? Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you. And you've been able to take care of the caseload so far, Marcy?
Yes, sir, we have. But when I talk about the courts opening, and there are making arrests now, arrests were really down for a period of time, and things are picking up greatly now. So will need this position.
Marcy, I did have a question come through asking about, are there any concerns that there would be any cuts to this due to COVID and the reduction in funds that we're seeing throughout the state of New York? I mean, what happens if in fact that occurs, or is that a possibility?
Okay. I sit in every week on a meeting with the Chief Defenders of New York and the New York State Defenders Association, and ILS comes in on every other meeting. As of right now, they have not had cuts. We have another meeting coming up this Friday. ILS will be present on that. And obviously, if those funds are cut, then that will affect those positions. And I'm aware of it. And people are hired knowing that they are funded by ILS funding. And if there is a percentage cut, there is. because these fundings are through Harrell Herring, those are contractual throughout the state as a result of a civil suit, and I don't see those being cut, or if they are, there'll be some litigation as a result of it from ILS. So at this point in time, I don't see them getting cut, but again, I can't predict the future, and obviously, if the funding is cut, then obviously that position's funding gets cut. Does that answer that?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. We appreciate your stance on that, but if you would please keep the board updated to whatever extent you start to hear that there might be concerns, certainly for our Kevin Garrity, our budget officer, so he's aware. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't think are there other questions on that? On her last resolution? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries. Thank you. And I know you had two quick items for discussion, your leasing office space, and then you also wanted to just briefly talk about the course reopening.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. In terms of leasing office space, because of COVID, it has affected my ability to have staff within our office space. I was going to get some space from probation. They're not giving up their space because they need their space as a result of COVID also. So my only solution that I came up with is leasing office space in the tower, which I believe is where Warren County Employment and Training is. We have made a discussion, and I've looked at space, and there's space available. We've had discussions with ILS regarding this. They are supportive of it. And what we would be doing is we would be using ILS funding to rent the space. So there would be no county expense for it. We have figured out what we need in terms of the phones, in terms of the lease, cleaning, internet, electric heating, cooling is included. The space is on the first floor. I have discussed with the staff at the tower that one modification needs to be done that they would do, and they would pay for that. We have money from ILS for furniture and filing cabinets, phones, chairs, etc., for laptops, PCs, and printers. The space is available now, and obviously, I had to bring it up as a discussion. I don't know logistically if I have to come back next month for a resolution, or can this discussion allow me to go into a resolution automatically as long as no county funds are being spent on it and is only covered by ILS funding. Again, I'm not sure of that procedure, and I didn't want to assume anything, but I didn't have all that information until the end of last week, so I didn't put it in a resolution request because I didn't have all those numbers, and I certainly wouldn't make a request to rent space if I didn't know everything was covered. So that's where I am on that. Once that space is rented and it's paid for by ILS, I can then hire and put these positions in that I am requesting. I'll have space to put them in. I'll have a conference room that I could put them in. I can't use my conference room, which is the old evidence room, because of the ventilation. I have one office that I had 2 people in that I now have to use as my conference room. I have 2 people in a single office. I can only have one of them in at a time. So it's affected my ability to meet with clients and to have enough staff to cover our needs.
Marcy, yeah. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I know we're running a few minutes over getting into Craig's meeting here, but I do think you bring up a very important and legitimate concern. What I don't want to do is hold you up too much, but at the same point in time, I know our board, particularly whether there's funds being expended or not, it is a contract. Mm-hmm. And what I would ask, and I think maybe Ryan from the county attorney's office is on, and Ryan Moore, and please let me know if this is not something that we can do. But perhaps what we could do is get that information out to members of our committee and kick it over to finance or person. I'm not sure what committee it should go to, but for a review and justification of it. And then ultimately a full board resolution if in fact that's needed. Either Ryan, could you just weigh in on that? With the interest, obviously, with COVID, not wanting to hold it up too much with the space being available, but if we need to, we can certainly call another meeting, which I'd hate to do, or kick it over to the next approving committee.
Sure. I think Marcy's idea today was to discuss the concept and make sure that supervisors were comfortable with the concept of doing this, but to ask you to make a decision right now on the contract and on a resolution without having had all the details in front of you is asking a lot. So if it's up to this committee has initial jurisdiction over it. So if you'd like to hold it until next month, if you'd like to do a special meeting, or if you or if this committee wants to refer it on to personnel, I could always make it part of my agenda for personnel and have Marcy present it there.
I think that without objection from the committee, that may be our best route to allow sufficient time in the agenda. Marcy, when we're planning the agenda, Amanda, just to give her a little more time to talk about it. And again, I think everyone's a little hesitant on committing to additional contracts, especially with everything going on right now. And we're making every effort to, I know there isn't a financial obligation, but ultimately it is a contract. To put it under Ryan's agenda on the county administrator item on personnel if Supervisor Simpson doesn't object, and if our committee's comfortable. Can I just get a feel for where we're at with that with our members?
Fine.
Does anyone else have any burning thoughts on this here?
That would be next Thursday, the 30th.
Yes, Amanda's saying yes.
Okay.
I don't need a resolution, Amanda, to kick it over there, right? We could just put it under Ryan's. Okay. And Marcy, is that all right with you? I think that might be the most, informative with enough notice, but also, attaching some of those documents for us to look at ahead of time. Even if we're not members of finance, it will be good to see it.
Great. Thank you. Certainly.
Okay. And just real briefly, if you don't mind, can you just talk about the courts, and then we'll get right over to Supervisor Leggett.
County court is only virtual for now. If a client cannot appear by Skype, then they have to come in. There's a kiosk in the court for family and criminal so that they could appear by Skype. Bolton opens on 8/12. Chester opens tomorrow. Hague opens 8/5. Horicon opens 8/5. Johnsburg 8/14. Lake George 8/6. Lake Luzerne 8/5. Queensbury is now today. Stony Creek is the second Monday in August. Thurman starts 8/4. Warrensburg started last week. All of the local courts are in person. They are limiting the number of people in the courtroom per time. And Queensbury, because their volume is extremely heavy, has added an extra afternoon. As of right now, it's Tuesday afternoons. They may have to add additional time if necessary. Some courts have plexiglass in, some don't. And so everything is starting to move that way. A lot of them require taking temperatures to walk into the county court wing. You have to have your temperature taken. So there's a lot of steps set up, and we have not been in person until starting last week with Warrensburg first. So that was, I know it was very fast, but I wanted to let you know that we're on top of it and we know what's going on. And so far, there have been no issues. Everyone obviously has to wear masks.
Marcy, I'm really glad that you brought this up at our committee to inform our board. I think it's really important we're aware of what's going on with our local courts. Are there any questions from any members of the board at all for Marcy regarding this? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, Supervisor Leggett?
Right. So, Marcy, your office has coordinated with the DA's office as well to carry out these. You've kind of gone through a run through on this to see how it all works at the local courts.
Logistically, what we have done is I have personally contacted all the courts. They told me what they are doing, and we are making our schedule and working out accordingly. I can't tell you if the DA's office is appearing in person or by Skype. I have not personally spoken to Jason on that at this time, so I don't want to misstate. I know that in some courts, the DA's office is appearing by Skype, others in person. It depends also on their staffing issues and what else is going on with them, because as courts add extra dates, it affects what we're doing. In addition, the DA's office, I know, has started grand jury because I know cases have been indicted. So I know that on Fridays they're extremely busy, and obviously their grand jury other day was also Tuesdays, so that affects their ability to appear in certain courts, and so they may be doing Skype as a result on some courts.
Thank you.
Marcy, thank you. And again, I think it's an important update. Amanda, maybe what we could do is invite our district attorney to speak at our next committee meeting next month to let us know how things are going from the perspective of the people as well. Thank you. All right, thank you, Marcy. Certainly, we appreciate all that information. Is there any public comment, Don? I don't have YouTube.
Sorry, it took a minute to unmute. No, Chairwoman Seaver, there's nothing at this point.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing further to come before our committee, we will turn it over to Supervisor Leggett here. Could I call for a motion to adjourn? That motion is made by my two favorite supervisors today, Supervisor Leggett, and seconded by, I see Supervisor Driscoll wants to raise his hand there too. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone object? Great. We're going to end criminal justice and move right over to public safety here in a minute as soon as YouTube can get rolling. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chairwoman.